We are outside of Madrid, and we're here with Trek, Jordan Roessingh, Adam Bird from Trek. What is this?
This is the brand new Gen 8 Madone SLR, specifically behind you. And for us, this is sort of the culmination of the ultimate race bike. It's a merger of what was our previously lightest road race bike in the Emonda with our fastest road race bike in the Madone, and merging those two platforms into our lightest and fastest single ultimate race bike.
Why? Why did you do that?
For several reasons. One is just if we can execute the concept of making a super lightweight, super fast bike and not compromise on any of the performances that made our previous platform so amazing, we wanted to do that. And through a lot of R&D and through some discoveries in that process, we finally found the ability for us to be able to do that. So the new bike is just as fast as the previous generation Madone from an aerodynamics perspective. It's just as light as the Emonda from a weight perspective. And being able to merge that performance into one product is beneficial to any rider that's seeking performance. It's a much faster bike than the previous generation Emonda. It's a much lighter bike than the previous generation Madone. So independent of which bike you're riding before, this new bike is vastly superior.
And how did you do that? How did you manage to merge these two different bikes?
Yeah, so this, the R&D timeline for our projects is quite long. So this actually started out in 2021 as R&D for what was going to be the next generation Emonda. And one of the big things we were working on very early in R&D was a new set of tube cross sections. And so we came up with what we call our 2D shape library, which has literally thousands of different tube cross sections in it that we can then choose and play around with to choose the optimal for different areas of the bike. And I think Jordan in the presentation touched on the down tube as being a really key example here. One of the things we learned with that shape library was that this particular really wide, really flat down tube shape, when combined with the entire bike, the wheels, the bottles, the seat tube, ends up being not only very structurally efficient because it's so wide, but also super fast. And so that's kind of when, as an engineering and product development team, we realized that if we continued developing the Emonda, we could have made it maybe a little bit lighter, but by merging the two platforms, we could make a bike that was just as light as the Emonda and just as fast as the Madone.
But there's also something else going on. You have something else.
Right, yeah, so that was sort of the initiation of that idea, and then executing that. The new tube shapes are a really big part of that. The other really major part of it is our new materials, so OCLV 900. And I sort of break that down into two different areas. So one is we have a new fiber type that's 20% stronger than fibers we've used in the past. That basically enables us to use much less material while still making the frame as strong as it needs to be and as stiff as we want it to be. And then we also have a new molding technology. So we're using what we're calling our net shape bladder, which enables us to use material much more efficiently. The material is laid up directly onto the bladder, and so you preserve sort of the optimal shape of the carbon fiber during the molding process. That process also enables us to be much more efficient in really complex areas of the bike. So ISOFlow is a really hard area to mold and to design. And compared to the way we molded it for the Gen 7 Madone, the molding here is also it's a lot lighter, but also that's part of the way we were able to make the new bike so compliant.
Yeah, so what are the gains on this bike compared to the other ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's a lot going on here. To me, it's sort of better in every way than the two platforms we had before. So as Jordan said, it's as light as the Emonda, so you're getting as light a bike as you ever had before. It's as fast aerodynamically as the Madone. The vertical compliance, so the comfort that you have through the saddle, is a lot better than either of those bikes. So it's 80% more compliant than the previous Madone. And then for me, I think the final piece is just the ride quality of the bike, the stiffness, the way we place stiffness throughout the bike. It's a lot stiffer than the Gen 7 Madone, but also it's sort of the optimal stiffness throughout the bike. I think you guys experienced, hopefully on the descent today, that it's really enjoyable, very precise handling bike on the road.
And also one thing that I did experience was this great balance between stiffness and compliance. That's what I felt. But for people who don't understand stiffness I think can be understood, but what is compliance?
Compliance essentially is just a stiffness metric that equates into comfort for the rider. So compliance, we have two internal ways of measuring that, one at the saddle and one at the fork essentially. And compliance is simply measured with putting a static amount of weight onto the saddle and measuring its displacement with that amount of weight. So when we say that the new bike is 80% more compliant than the previous generation Madone, then that means with that amount of weight, it actually moved 80% more. And that's something that you can definitely feel in the bike, is that comfort in the saddle. That compliance is basically just stiffness, but it's in a very specific orientation. The same thing can be said for the fork. So we have comfort stiffness that we talk about, which is this fork displacement. So if you hit a bump, the fork will displace. You experience that as comfort, and that's the same thing as its stiffness in a specific orientation measured with displacement with a constant weight.
And also, most other brands, they take pride in adding a size to their bike range, but you are removing 2 sizes. You're going down from 8 sizes to 6 sizes. How come?
I mean, I think for us, part of it is just simplification for the rider. Like our previous sizing regime had a lot of overlap and sort of made it actually more complicated for a rider to be able to find the optimal size for them. So myself as an example, I could be on a 56 or a 58 and both were actually okay. But making that decision is actually a really hard one if you're committing all your hard-earned dollars to buying the bike. So by simplifying that sizing range and making it so that there's sort of one optimal size for every person, but not restricting the total range of fit. So our smallest bike is actually a little bit smaller than our previous 47. Our extra large is now bigger than our previous 62. We're accommodating all of the riders still, but making it easier for you to find your optimal size.
For me, it was actually beneficial because usually a 56 was a little too big for me, but now this medium ML size was perfect. But I noticed that the big gap is going to be in the upper ranges between 58 and 62, right?
Yeah, 58 and 62, there is, I would say, a bigger change in overall stack specifically as a metric, but there are slightly smaller or slightly fewer riders in that higher height. And we also see that as you get bigger, you start scaling the stack more. So there is sort of this progression that riders experience that they need. They need a higher front end, and it's not just this completely linear progression that we've historically even had in our stack and reach progression. So from that perspective, it is a bigger change, but directionally it's more appropriate for those bigger riders. And again, from all of the riders that we've tested and using this massive fit database that we have, we believe that we're not forcing any riders into a bike that won't be optimally fit for them.
It also seems like the Gen 7 Madone actually just kind of recently came out. So this is kind of, it's progressed quite quickly.
That's certainly true, and that wasn't originally our intention. And as Adam mentioned before, when we started the R&D of this project, it was actually with the intent of it being the next generation of Emonda, and it was only through discovery of that we actually made it sort of a product strategy change and said, well, we can make an Emonda super fast, and so what's the point of the Madone at that point? And so it wasn't our intention to have only a 2-year life cycle to the last generation of the bike. The last generation of the bike of the Madone was an amazing bike. It was super fast, it rode awesome. And so we were super excited to be able to put that in market. But anytime that we have the possibility of really dramatically improving performance on a bike, we're going to be excited to be able to also put that in the market. And for sure, this is a step change in performance, both from a weight and aerodynamics perspective, from anything else that we've made in the history of Trek, really.
What's the weight on the bike, by the way? I didn't see the numbers.
It varies depending on the spec. So for
the
sure,
top spec.
Yeah, for sure, an SLR9 bike can get down to 6.8 kilos. In all of our marketing material, independent of the spec, we will be publishing weights for all of the different specifications of the bikes, all the way from an SL5 up to an SLR9. And that for sure, that was one of the key parameters of the project for the race team, is that they're wanting to make sure that they can race a super fast bike that gets down all the way down to the UCI weight limit. And we've seen with team builds, which normally when we publish weights don't include a bottle and cage or pedals, but for the team, they're getting very close to that 6.8 kilo with cages, with pedals, with Garmin mounts, all of those things accessorized onto the bike. And so we're really excited about giving them this amazing racing tool, but for consumers, they'll be able to get actually potentially even a lighter weight bike than that.
What's going to happen to the Emonda?
Starting with the launch of this bike, the Emonda as a carbon platform and family goes away. So this bike does replace completely both the previous generation Madone family and Emonda family. The Emonda will live on as a name and as a legacy as the Emonda ALR, which is our most economical aluminum race bike that we have within our product line. But the Emonda family otherwise goes away. And for those riders that really enjoyed their Emonda before, we genuinely believe that this is a massive performance benefit for them. Even if you look at an Emonda SL level product, the new Madone SL is actually a 175 gram lighter frame than that Emonda SL. So you're getting all of these aerodynamic benefits and a lighter weight bike. And so for those riders, we believe that this is just a much better experience for them if they're seeking any performance gains.
Is it also like narrowing down the line of bikes? Is that also important today to simplify things a little bit from a company perspective?
For sure. I would say that there's benefits for all of our customers. I mean, we look at our riders at the end of the day who have to buy a bike, and we want to simplify the decision for them. There was a lot of uncertainty over which platform was right for them. Do I want the light bike? I want a light bike. Do I want a fast bike? I want a fast bike, but which do I buy? Do I buy a Madone or an Emonda? And that complexity or that uncertainty does make it harder for them to finally commit to buying one bike. There's value for our dealers as well, our bike shops. This allows them to be able to stock more of the right bikes in their store, that they can have a full product line, they can have more colors, more sizes potentially on their floor versus having to separate it between two families of products. And for us, it also means that we're better able to supply the global demand for the product because of the fact that it simplifies that product line, and we can commit more resources into sort of a narrower lineup of products. So genuinely, our biggest motivation is the end consumer and making sure that we're providing a great product for them, but there's a lot of downstream benefits as well.
When working on the bike, what was the most fun part to work with?
I think there's a lot of fun parts. I think one thing that's really unique and special is we own our race team, and we got to get feedback from the team like throughout the entirety of the project. So as Jordan shared in the presentation, like even before we had any bikes to show, we were interviewing the team to see what they want in the next bike, what areas they see for improvement. And then we were able to do ride testing with the team, actually going quite far back. So even in December of 2022 at Team Camp in Calpe, we brought them some early versions of the bike and got their feedback on that, and that feedback really shaped like how that prototype frame then merged or transformed into the production frame. I went to the equivalent Team Camp just 6 months ago with the team, and we brought them 2 final versions of the bike. And it's always, the team is very honest with us, and they're very particular about what they want. So whenever you're meeting with them, you have to be ready that they may tell you something that you don't want to hear. And that trip ended up being super exciting because they rode the bike, and actually many riders rode the bike. So traditional Emonda riders, so Ciccone, Longoborghini, who win their races on the climbs, and then bigger, more powerful Madone riders, Jasper and Mads. So different sizes, different styles of riders, and they all, their one complaint with the bike is that we weren't allowing them to race it sooner. They all wanted to race it at the classics as soon as they could, and we said, well, so the feedback from them sort of at the culmination of the project was super cool.
But was that part of the project also, was this a request from the team to have like one bike instead of 2 bikes to choose from, or is that at all an aspect?
No, I think it was more of a conclusion that we made based on their feedback. They really liked their Emonda, they really liked their Madone, and they kept communicating to us that they wanted more information or better information about how to choose between the 2 of them. And again, we're sort of lamenting that they had to make that decision all the time, and they weren't the ones necessarily being like, well, we just want one, partially because they were skeptical that we were going to be able to make one with no compromises. So even when we introduced the idea of saying, well, we're going to simplify your lives, we're going to make one bike and it's going to be the best of both worlds, they were like, you're going to screw it up. I'm an Emonda rider, I love that bike, and you're going to make it heavier. Or I'm a Madone rider and I love that bike, and you're going to make it slower. And so that skepticism was actually something that really drove us in the product development process of like, we can't incrementally make the Emonda or the new Madone heavier than an Emonda. We can't incrementally make the new Madone slower than the previous Madone. We have to make them equal parts light and fast because that's what the team demands. And so that was really a challenge from the forefront, as they said, okay, if you can do that, we would embrace that bike and it'd be cool, but you have to do that. Otherwise, we're not going to like this new product. And so that became the goal throughout the project and really the driver to make sure that we're sort of eking out all those tiny little performance gains and achieving the goal of weight and aerodynamics.
Cool. How has this process affected the price of the bike?
Ooh. For sure, we're very conscious of sort of retail inflation of the price of bikes over the last several years. And so actually in this process, that was one of the things that we took into consideration a lot, in that this isn't just an SLR level product, this is also an SL level product. And the Emonda platform, as an example, was our most economical carbon platform within the Trek family. And so we wanted to make sure that we were both providing the technology at a wide range of prices, but that we're very mindful that we weren't going to like dramatically raise the prices on all of our bikes by introducing that technology. So for sure the prices on Madone SLs go up a little bit from where the Emonda SLs were, but they're actually generally, and this varies throughout the globe, but generally less expensive than the previous Madone SL. And so again, we're providing this huge performance benefit, but we're providing really a huge value at the Madone SL level of product. So it does inflate a little bit, but again, we're very conscious of making sure that we're making our bikes as accessible as possible.
Yeah, I mean, because it's a discussion that's rising how bikes are.
For sure, yeah.
I mean, how far can we push it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think even for us, like the Emonda ALR is a great example of like, we want to make it so that riders have a way to get into bike racing, road racing, in a real genuine platform that provides the right geometry, that's actually fast and actually light. And so for us, like just maintaining that product in our portfolio, because many other brands are abandoning that category of having a high performance race aluminum platform. So that bike generally is around 2,000 euros, but delivers an amazing amount of performance. And so that's sort of the stepping stone into the family of Madone products now, is saying, if you just want to get into road racing, if you want to get into fast group riding, this is identical geometry, this is still a really lightweight but high value product, and that's sort of people's first road race bike within the Trek family.
Cool. Thanks for having us. It's been
Thanks for coming.
Amazing to try the bike out here in Spain. And I'm stoked to try it some more at home, my home roads. Great. And it's also going to be visible on the coming tour.
Yeah, the team will start racing the bike at the Dauphiné and the Tour de Suisse, and then the formal launch will be at the Tour, so then it'll be available for everyone to see.
Yeah.